Welcome to Meet the Candidate with your host, Sue Lonnie Madsen. Meet the Candidate is your opportunity to see local candidates and hear about the experiences that have shaped their lives. Meet the Candidate is a nonpartisan community project brought to you by our friends at Greater Spokane Incorporated, Ponderosa Republican Women's Club, We Believe, We Vote, and Better Spokane. Now, here's Sue Lonnie.
Okay. Welcome to Meet the Candidate. My guest for this session is Clint Tannehill, who's a candidate for U.S. Senate. Welcome,
Hello.
Clint.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us in the studio today here in Spokane. I understand you've arrived via Wenatchee from Kirkland.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
Yeah.
Nice to have you.
Many trips around the state.
It's
many so far, and many to come. So
well, that's what it takes to run for the U.S. Senate. So we always start with just simple questions like tell us about where you grew up and the kind of things in your childhood that shape your perspective.
Perfect. Well, I grew up right here in Spokane. I was born at Valley General, and my family moved away for a little bit. We ended up moving back. Lived in northeast Spokane, Hilliard area, all the way through the high school ages, and then actually in the downtown area here for a little bit. As they were, revitalizing some places. Went to college here for a little bit out at Spokane Falls. Mm-hmm. And then, I've been a lifelong entrepreneur also. So being an entrepreneur since an early age had me through, a spectrum of businesses, and I ended up traveling for work. So it brought me out of Spokane, traveling for work, and then I ended up moving back to Seattle. So it was kind of like coming home, but a little bit bigger city, so it worked out well. And I have family here, so I was still able to come over here as often as I'd like.
You're back and forth. And,
yeah.
Well,
as much as I can be.
One of the things I like to ask people about is first jobs. And so since you've been a serial entrepreneur, what are some of those interesting early jobs that you've picked up?
First job, steer in on Division.
Oh, yeah.
North Division. So it was back then, don't want to get anyone in trouble, but... But I was pretty young. It was back there cooking burgers. Both my brothers had worked there, and it was, I was a shoo-in for the position.
Yeah.
So, Wranglers and whammies and.
Well, it's sometimes being that if your two older brothers had a good reputation, that gives you a reputation as this kid learned how to show up on time. And
yeah.
That makes a difference.
Or at least most of the time.
Yeah, or at least most of the time. So, and in those school years, what are some of the activities that you were particularly interested in? Just working, or you have some?
For the most part, my hobby is working. When I'm not working on, my main business, I probably have a passion project or something else
so
going.
What is your main business?
Well, I guess it's kind of transferred from one of my passion projects to maybe one of my more main businesses, but I have a financial services company. I'm partners in a gym in downtown Seattle and an athletic equipment company, and then also in the process of opening a restaurant in downtown Seattle. So
okay, well that's can be a tough business climate.
Yeah. No, they all are. The good ones are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about some places that you may have traveled that have given you some insights? You've lived you grew up in Spokane, you've lived in Western Washington, but you said you've traveled a lot for work.
Yeah, so in the in-between stages, as far as adult life, I moved down to Southern California, so I was in San Diego for about a year, and then went up to LA, and I lived there for a couple of years, and then I was in Boise for a little bit for work. All just absolutely wonderful places. I love going back, especially Boise. If you haven't been to Boise, mm-hmm. you got to go to Boise. I think Boise is way underrated. It's beautiful, clean.
It is a lovely city.
Yeah, it's just so nice.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about some of those things that you've learned that you bring to the Senate position. Some background.
I think it's interesting. So you travel all over. And everyone has differences, right? Mm-hmm. We even look at this state, and we were talking about even the different areas that are half an hour apart in the state, and people have differences, but at that same time, people also have a lot of similarities. People want similar things in life, and ultimately, people want to live happy lives, and how do we do that? And there's a couple key ways, and they're test proven, that we're able to help people live those happy, healthy lives. So I think we end up having more in common than we realize, even from Washington to Southern California or Boise, or even across our own state. Sometimes we let our differences get in the way of that, and it becomes the scarlet glasses, and that's all we look at it through, and we can only see our differences. But ultimately, we have a lot of things that are similar, no matter where you're at.
So what is it that you that really pushes you to want to volunteer to run for office? Not everybody sees the world and decides they need to run for office. It's
the 4-month job interview.
Yes, it is.
I think it's been several things over the years that have kind of got me in that direction. High school, one of my favorite classes was political science, or what did we call it then? We called it something else.
Well, let's see. It's been
social studies,
current world problems of economics and government.
When I was there, was social studies.
Okay.
But looking back, I'm like, oh, that makes more sense now, because that was pretty much the political science class. And then several years back, about 3 years back, I was on a phone call with my brother, and we're sitting there discussing the political cycle and the candidates coming through, and some of these candidates going for uncontested offices, and we were just appalled. Some of the people that were running, lack of qualifications, lack of moral values, or like, why is someone running for office? What is their ultimate goal? And you question the system, but you got to step back and look at the system and say, well, we're all a part of it, right? You can run for office, I can run for office, and ultimately, not enough good people run for office. So it's like, well, how do we change that? Well, someone's got to do something about it, and that kind of reset my trajectory in a direction of studying the political system as much as I could, and that's what I've been doing for the last 3 years on the side of doing my business. So my hobby outside of running my businesses have been studying.
Okay, are there issues that got you involved? I know this is a non-political interview, but there are things that energize you, so I'm trying to...
The things that really energize me, one, healthcare. I think we got to have healthy people. We spend far too much on healthcare to have the system that we have, right? So I think healthcare is just so important. And then education. Growing up in my neighborhood, it wasn't, finishing up high school. No one's like, oh, where are you going to go to college? Or, maybe it wasn't an option.
Which high school did you go to?
I went to Rogers.
Rogers, yeah.
Yeah.
It's doing great now.
Yeah, it's doing great now. So I'm not trying to take away from that. But I'm just, speaking from my experience, and maybe I was, the kid in the corner wearing the dunce hat. But the availability and, just the general access to it wasn't there. So ultimately, I would like to see that change. And with education, I think it's very systemic to many of our issues. If we look at inequalities, health issues, violent crimes, and we take a map and we highlight it with all these issues, and then we overlay that same map with education, and we're going to see a very clear correlation of lower education and all these other societal issues that we have. So then how do we fix it?
And I'm getting away from here. So now you've got 1 minute to wrap up with, tell people why they should vote for you for U.S. Senate so that you can fix it. Okay.
Ultimately, I think if you want to vote for me, if you already know me and you want to vote for me, that's great. But if you don't know me, I ask you to go to my website, check out the campaign, see what we're doing, follow us on any social media platform that you enjoy. And if it resonates with you, if it's something that aligns with your values and your moral compass, then follow along, contribute to the campaign if you can, and then ultimately vote for us when the time comes around. But I urge you to go to the website and check it out and make sure it's something that aligns with you.
Okay. So, thank you, Clint Tannehill. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Enjoy your 4-month job interview.
Yeah, right. Thank you.
Thanks for watching Meet the Candidate. Spokane Talks thanks our community-minded partners, Greater Spokane Incorporated, the Ponderosa Republican Women's Club, We Believe We Vote, and Better Spokane for helping make Meet the Candidate possible.